Hey YouTube, this is Southern Prepper 1. Did a lot of painting today while I was up on the ladder. I thought about this and said, you know, I need to do a class on this. Because a lot of people think security for the prepper is they have a perimeter and they have a bunch of guys with guns around their perimeter. And that's more like local. But there's so much more to actively to defend a community. Now, if you just have your family, you're not going to be able to use this. But if you're a part of a community, and you might not be part of a community right now, but in a worst case event, your community or your people around you might come together, and you have to do more proactive steps in protecting yourselves other than, hey, we have a fence and we have guys with guns behind it. That's not going to work. Use everything that the military is doing, and we have to modify it. So I'm going to be teaching you, some doctrine from the military, but it's going to be twisted and turned for the prepper. Because there's a lot of things the military has that we don't have. But there's still a lot of good principles, probably 90% of things that they do that we can do. I'm going to talk about security operations. It's not the perimeter. It is a lot more than that. It is basically the ability to give you early warning and to give you some time to react to a threat. Let's say we're here in this big area and the enemy is around us wherever they be. This is a security force that will operate way outside, and it will give you time and it will give you the ability to maneuver. And these are very important. And usually we use these 5 security operations to protect the main force of the military, so they're not directly engaged the enemy on the enemy's terms. There's 5 forms. The first one is screen, next one is guard, next one is cover, next one is area security, and the next one is local security. They're all try to do the same thing, but they have little differences. I'm going to give you the 5 fundamentals that apply to all 5 of these security operations. First of all, it is going to provide early and accurate warning. You're going to try to detect the enemy, and you're going to then report it back to your community or to your central area you're trying to protect. In the military, this would be our main body of force, and we're trying to give them time. But when I'm talking now, I'm talking this is our community, this is our prepper group, this is our retreat. So you're basically detect the enemy, report it back. You are trying to make sure that the enemy that's out here does not get close enough to actually see your community or your retreat, or be able to fire direct weapons into it. Now they might, if they have indirect weapons, yes, they'll probably be able to do that. But we're talking direct weapons. Do not let the enemy get close enough to see your community or your retreat. This is going to give time for your defenses, your commander in charge of security of your community. It's going to give him time to come up with a plan, because he'll know the enemy is coming and how many of the enemy. Next, this will give you the ability to react. He will have time on his hands because the enemy is spotted out here. If you don't have the security operation going on, the enemy is going to be right here on your perimeter or very close to your perimeter. He'll be able to fire into your perimeter, and whoever's in charge of the security will have no time to react and no maneuvering space. The reason is, if your operation is out here and you discover the enemy has to travel from here to here. This gives you time, it gives you maneuvering space. That way you can maneuver backwards, and your main security force will have the ability to maneuver forward and engage the enemy. Next, the security force is going to be oriented on the main body or the prepper community. You are going to stay between the enemy and the community. Now, if we're a bunch of people moving, you use the same principle. You're still going to have the security operations out here, and you're moving, and while the main body is moving, your security operation is moving too. For this scenario, we have a fixed location, a community of preppers, or just a community of people trying to protect from some bad guys. So you want to stay between the bad guys and the good guys if you're on the security detail. You're going to perform continuous recon. You are going to seek out the enemy. the only way that you can defend this place is if you find the enemy. You don't want the enemy to slip through and find the community before you find it. So your job is to actively go out there, recon, look for the enemy. You're going to recon key terrain. If you have big mountains or areas that are very vital that you think the enemy could use to observe you, those are areas you're going to be constantly checking with patrols. The ultimate goal of this security operation is to find out the enemy COA. That's course of action. You're trying to find out what the enemy is going to do so you can put up a better defense. When you do find out what it's going to do, you'll also assist the main body in the security thing. But right now, all you're doing is reconning and reporting back. When you do make contact with the enemy, and it might not be where you're directly engaging with the enemy, but when you see the enemy, do not disengage. Stay in contact with the enemy. The only reason your SOP would say disengage if it directly comes from someone in charge of your security back here and say, hey, it's time to disengage, fall back. Other than that, SOP, you stay there, you continue to do visual observation on the bad guy and collect information and report it back to the main body. Now, if you're one of these guys out here and you're reporting it back, you report it back to one central location and they will give that information out to this community, or you might have other friendly communities. They will then push information out to them. It's not your job. Your job is just to observe, report back to one person. So that is 5 basically general concepts with the security operation. The first one I want to go over, because there's the screen, the guard, the cover, the area, and the local. We're going to talk about the screen. They all pretty much do the same thing, but they're totally different in some areas. The screen. Let's think of a screen, and you can remember this as if you have a screen in your window. If you were trying to keep water out, it really wouldn't work. You could pour water right through it. But your job as a screen, if you're out there on a screen, is just to observe. You identify the bad guy, and you try to identify his course of action. Now, this is probably the weakest security operation there is. Your job also is to destroy or repel any of the enemy recon units. So if they send a small recon unit in, really that is the only time you're going to directly engage the enemy, is to destroy recon units only. Or you're going to fight in a self-defense form. You basically have very minimal combat power out there. The bulk of your combat power as a community is back in the community. So you're very weak out here, but you're strong in here. This can be helpful because then you have most of your forces where you can be used to repel the enemy. So basically you're going to find the enemy, and to make the purpose of it is to detect them and to report it back and to repel any enemy recon. When you make contact under the screen, maintain it the whole time and just keep reporting back. If by any chance you have to displace, then it's your time when you're going to harass the enemy. Do not become decisively engaged where it gives you no ability to fall back, and you can be engaged with the enemy so much where you can't fall back because you're going to get killed or you're going to lose men. So just harass the enemy. This is the time to take some pot shots to harass them, to slow them down. And by them taking just a little bit of small arms fire, what's going to do is slow them down a lot, and it then buys a little bit more time to deal with this. In the military, if these guys observe the bad guys, they would not fire direct fire on them. They wouldn't shoot at them. What they would do is call indirect fire, and this would do is the bad guys wouldn't know where the OPs are. We don't have that capability, so we won't be able to harass the enemy with that. You will eventually want to fall back, and you might fall back to the next position or your next screen line. When you fall back, try to maintain contact. So don't all of a sudden just fall back quickly, because what you do is you just lost contact with the enemy. You don't know what he's going to do. You don't know what he's doing. So when you fall back, try to do this. So you're maintaining contact, you're not decisively engaged with the bad guy, but you're still giving real-time intel back to your community. So that's the screen. You don't have a lot of combat power. Your combat power's back here. Probably boring some of you to death. I'm going to go over, the next one will be what's called the guard. The guard is you have a bunch of combat power out here and you can do a lot more. So we still have a few more to go over. We're going to go over the guard next, and during that next video we'll go over guard, we'll go over cover, area security, and local security. I hope this helps. Security for the prepper is not, hey, just put all our guys on the perimeter. That's going to get you killed because you don't know what the enemy's going to do. You have to know what the enemy's course of action is so you can counter that. If you want to just say, oh, well, I'm going to sit behind my walls and my fences and I'm safe, you're only safe for a small period of time until the enemy puts you under observation, figures your weaknesses out, and deals with it. To protect the community, you have to be proactive, and you have to have a security operation going on way out here. Thanks for watching.